When it comes to his stance on Russia, Donald Trump is a man transformed.
I've known him for a long time now, and I don't believe he's going to violate his word.
I'm not happy with what Putin's doing. He's killing a lot of people, and I don't know what the hell happened to Putin.
And the latest sign that Trump's patience is wearing thin? I've always had a very good relationship with Vladimir Putin of Russia, but something has happened to him. He has gone absolutely crazy. What he's talking about is this.
Russia has intensified its strikes on Ukraine with the highest number of drones and missiles launched in a single night yet.
Hundreds of drones and missiles were launched across the country with a particular focus on the capital, Kyiv.
It wasn't just Kyiv that was hit. At one point, the entire country of Ukraine was under an air alert.
Putin thumbing his nose at the peace process might tell Trump two things: that Putin's not stopping the war, and maybe more importantly, he's also not listening to Trump's demands of Vladimir, stop. So is the Trump administration now trying to pull out of any hope that it can stop Putin's war in Ukraine?
Trump certainly does not want to fail in the process, but Trump also understands limitations of American power, of his influence.
We have a very, very good relationship, and we look forward to spending some very good time together. Vladimir, thank you very much.
We can start to answer this question of whether Trump's patience with Putin is running out by looking at how dramatically Trump's position on the war has changed.
Before I even arrive at the Oval Office, I will have the disastrous war between Russia and Ukraine settled. And it will take me no longer than one day. As far as Russia and Ukraine, if we had a real president, the president that knew, that was respected by Putin, he would have never invaded Ukraine.
To be fair, that last part, the unproven but also impossible to prove wrong claim that Putin would never have invaded Ukraine under Trump's watch, Trump still says that, even today.
This was a war that was never going to happen if I were president.
But the other part, about solving the war in a day, Trump doesn't say that anymore.
Trump said, I'm going to do this in 24 hours, and I think everybody knew that that was naive. This is not a deal that can be struck overnight.
Yes, and this is always the challenge with Trump, right? Whether to take him seriously or literally, or both or neither. But undeniably, it was always going to be difficult to end the war, mainly because of how far apart the two sides are.
It's out of constitution to recognize our occupied territory like territory of Russia. We will never do it.
After the first 3 or so years of fighting, Russia had managed to capture about a fifth of all of Ukraine. But this also includes what Russia captured nearly 10 years earlier: Crimea, which Russia annexed from Ukraine in 2014, also Donetsk and Luhansk, which were put under Russian-backed separatist control, and which Russia now considers its own territory.
Ukraine has never accepted the territories that Russia occupies in eastern Ukraine. They have only recognized that as a military fact, which they cannot overrun militarily.
Ukraine's president, Volodymyr Zelensky, has repeatedly pushed back against the notion that Russia should be allowed to keep what it's taken. But even beyond that, he's also thinking about how to save the country he has left. Zelensky's #1 priority is securing some kind of security guarantee from NATO, from the West, that would deter Russia from just deciding at some point in the future to invade again. But both of these things, forcing Russia to give up territory it's captured and allowing Ukraine to join a military alliance like NATO, these are red lines for Russia.
Russia hasn't shown any inclination at all to roll back on either of its two key demands: no security guarantees for Ukraine and recognition of the occupied territories as Russian.
And remember, Trump and his administration see things a bit more transactionally. How do we end the fighting as quickly as possible? And how does the U.S. get reimbursed?
Biden, very, very foolishly, stupidly, frankly, gave $300 billion and $350 billion more accurately to a country to fight and to try and do things. And you know what happened? We get nothing.
So far, what Trump has managed to accomplish is to get the two sides talking and to sign a mineral deal with Ukraine that gives the U.S. a share in its resource wealth in exchange for not so much a promise, but an understanding that by having some skin in the game, the US would have more of a reason to defend Ukraine. But this hasn't been enough. And so, for every step forward,
President Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin agreed to a limited ceasefire in Ukraine.
We just spent 2.5 hours talking to Vladimir Putin, and I think some progress has been made.
It seemed like there were 2 steps back.
The Ukrainian Air Force claiming that Russia launched more than 100 drones into Ukraine following a high-stakes phone call between President Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin.
And Trump would eventually replace his ambitious bravado of putting an immediate end to the war with the claim that everyone should have known he was grandstanding since the start. First, in March, on a news magazine show called Full Measure.
But as a candidate, you said you would have this war settled in 24 hours.
Well, I was being a little bit sarcastic when I said that. I would. What I really mean is I'd like to get it settled, and I think I'll be successful.
Then he repeated something similar about a month later when the same point was put to him in an interview with Time magazine. His answer, well, I said that figuratively, and I said that as an exaggeration. Obviously, people know that when I said that, it was said in jest.
You have to be thankful. You don't have the cards. You're buried there. Your people are dying.
An important turning point in the Trump administration's belief that there was an achievable end to the war was in how Trump's subordinates began to cast doubt on the entire process. Marco Rubio, the U.S. Secretary of State, key in all talks between the two sides, he signaled a willingness to abandon the entire process back in April.
We're not going to continue to fly all over the world and do meeting after meeting after meeting if no progress is being made. So if they're serious about peace, either side or both, we want to help. If it's not going to happen, then we're just going to move on.
And just a week ago, we heard the same sentiment from the Vice President, J.D. Vance.
It's Joe Biden's war. It's Vladimir Putin's war. It's not our war. We're going to try to end it, but if we can't end it, we're eventually going to say, you know what, that was worth a try, but we're not doing it anymore.
But here's what's really important to notice, that the Trump administration doesn't believe Putin is solely accountable for Russia's invasion of Ukraine. It also blames Ukraine for fighting back.
Listen, when you start a war, you got to know that you can win the war, right? You don't start a war against somebody that's 20 times your size and then hope that people give you some missiles.
On Truth Social, too, Trump has repeatedly scolded Ukraine for being so unwilling to cede ground to Russia. President Zelensky is doing his country no favors by talking the way he does. Everything out of his mouth causes problems. I don't like it, and it better stop. And of course, this builds on that unforgettable flashpoint that the world witnessed months ago, which threw into question whether Trump even saw Ukraine as a victim worth defending at all.
You're right now not in a very good position. You've allowed yourself to be in a very bad position, and he happens to be right about it.
From the very beginning of the war,
you're not in a good position. You don't have the cards right now. With us, you start having cards. Right now, you don't. You're playing cards. You're playing cards. You're gambling with the lives of millions of people. You're gambling with World War III. You're gambling with World War III.
Have you said thank you once? This entire meeting? No, in this entire meeting, have you said thank you?
Trump has long questioned the value of defending Ukraine. He has repeatedly berated the Biden administration for giving Ukraine money and weapons without any guarantee of seeing that investment returned, and taking a hostile position against not just Putin, but both sides may be what allows Trump to simply walk away from the whole thing.
He may have to cushion it and walk away and say, I did my best, but it didn't work. And it's not my fault, it's their fault. So he's kind of edging his way back and positioning himself, and he could walk away if he has to.
And from Trump's point of view, there may be good reason for the U.S. to exit stage left sooner rather than later.
I would say what Trump most wants is the peace agreement, so that he can say, I told you I was going to get a peace agreement, and I got a peace agreement.
Trump wants to be seen as a winner, and an obviously failed deal that was a sort of humiliation for the United States would be hard to, perhaps not impossible, but hard for him to spin as something that he should be proud of rather than sort of dismayed by.
Now, one thing we can never quite rule out is the possibility that these are all just tactics, that the US only needs to threaten to walk away to make the parties want to come together.
Trump does not operate on a consistent tempo. He goes in flashes. So that's why I'm loath to say, oh, he'll walk away, put it away, lock up the cabinet, and just say, that's gone. No. It'll be, anytime it's catchy and it's good for him, he'll jump in. So I don't think you're ever going to see him walk away completely.
But Putin's advantage is that time is on his side. Russia has a population several times the size of Ukraine's and an economy that is 10 times as large. It can outlast Ukraine in a firefight, and maybe it can outlast the US too.
Putin ultimately wants the United States to withdraw from Europe and for European security to be reordered on Russian terms.
We've seen these expressions of frustration sporadically at Vladimir Putin coming out in Trump's statements, but still he keeps at the process. We've seen these threats by US figures to walk away from the negotiations, but it still carries on. So at what point they will finally cut Ukraine loose, or indeed Ukraine might cut the United States loose, for the moment we simply can't tell.
He doesn't want it to be seen as a failure, but there is limitations as to what he can do. So you can walk away and say, I did my best. The people I'm trying to negotiate, make peace with, do not want to make a peace on terms that both sides could agree upon. They're just too far apart. And that could be the final answer.
Yes, it's hard to know Trump's tolerance for being seen to try to make a deal, but fail before he decides simply to stop playing the game entirely.